Yes, we can.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everybody to Cattle Chats for, for the month of March. We've been doing these for a few months, and we've been getting some fairly good response, so we are going to continue doing them until I guess June, until cattle hit pasture, hopefully, and hopefully there'll be no snow and we'll have good pasture by then. But for now, we'll continue on with them. And for this week's topic, we were getting a few questions regarding minerals, and we had a couple speakers lined up, but they were unfortunately busy for today. So I was able to put together a presentation with some of their work. So hopefully you'll be able to answer all your questions as we go through. So what I plan to do today is talk a bit about requirements that the beef cow has for mineral, what to look for if you're seeing cows that maybe aren't healthy, or they're just not their normal cells in the herd, and maybe some of the things can be mineral related. And then if so, how we could maybe look at correcting those, or what type of minerals we need to be getting into them to help correct some of those problems. So first of all, maybe just to start on what a cow does need for growth, and I guess one of the biggest things is, even before we start talking about minerals, we probably need to talk about a couple of the more important nutrients that they need. They need energy, which is the first limiting nutrient, and a cow that is lacking energy is probably going to be lacking in other things as well. But until you get the energy level up, you're probably not going to see any benefits of putting extra mineral in front of them. Energy is required to grow and keep the body functioning, maintains milk production for cows with calves, and cows that are going to calve, it helps to maintain their pregnancy. And cattle that are lacking energy, one of the first things you'll notice is milk production will go down if they're nursing a calf, and in cows that haven't calved, we will start seeing abortions in those cows because of the lack of energy. Low energy intake during late pregnancy can result in lots of things besides just abortions. You can get lower birth weight calves, which in a lot of cases is lower birth weight than expected. So even if you've got calving these bulls, these lower birth weights usually turn into weak calves. You get higher death rates of newborn calves. The cow will have lower milk production. Because of that, you will get the lower weaning weights later in the fall. Rebreeding is going to be an issue, so days before she cycles after calving will be an issue, and also conception rates after calving will be an issue. So energy definitely is something that is the biggest limiting factor in cattle production. The other major one is protein, and it's the second limiting nutrient. It's the principal building block of most tissue. It aids in digestion of low-quality forages. So in a year like this year, where we're feeding, starting to get into situations where a lot of producers are running short of feed, if you've got enough protein in their diet, it'll help them digest some of that poor quality feed. And then deficiencies of protein are very similar to what you'll see in deficiencies in energy. So basically, if you're lacking energy, you're probably lacking protein as well. So just a couple things that are probably more key than the mineral issue that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the presentation. So minerals for beef cattle. Animals have specific requirements for mineral. It depends on the type of animal you're feeding, the weight, the age of the animal, as well as the rate of performance you're expecting from the animal. So if you're expecting high weight gains, good milk production, animal to rebreed quick, you're going to be looking at a mineral program that's going to be something where that cattle is not lacking anything, that cow is not lacking anything at all. So again, look at your herd, look what you're expecting those animals to do, And if you're expecting them to perform at the top end, you're needing to supply them with nutrients to get there. When you have mineral imbalances or deficiencies, it can result in, first of all, it's decreased performance. So that's one of the first things you'll lose. You'll see decreased disease resistance, reproductive issues, and all of those result in losses of dollars or dollars left on the table. And when we get to the later part of the presentation, we'll be showing you some of the dollars and cents of feeding mineral. And it's a fairly big issue. So you know, just this one alone can definitely pay and put some money in your pocket. So about minerals, besides water, the dry matter intake and salt that cows eat normally, that they don't actually realize what they're missing, or cows don't realize what they need for minerals and how much they need. And they'll normally, you know, drink as much water as they want. They'll eat as much dry matter feed as we're putting in front of them, and normally they'll eat as much salt that they want if we have it in front of them. But those would be like the three main ones. Other than that, the minerals are not usually uniformly palatable, and this means they may or may not eat the mineral that we're offering to them. So if we're offering free choice mineral, a lot of times cattle may not even be looking at it or eating it. So the minerals, they're basically broken down into two different categories. We have macro minerals and we have micro minerals. The macro minerals are required in large amounts, and we'll go through each of these different ones, and then the micro minerals are required in smaller amounts. When we talk about macro minerals, calcium is one of the major ones, and most of our forages are usually good sources of calcium. So producers feeding, you know, alfalfa, hay ration probably have good amounts of calcium in the diet. Cereals are usually marginal source of calcium. So producers that are feeding a high grain ration or a silage, grain silage ration, usually have issues with lower amounts of calcium. Legumes like alfalfa usually contain high levels of calcium, while grasses contain only small amounts of calcium. So if feeding in the wintertime and you're feeding a high silage ration, you're probably in a situation where your calcium levels aren't high enough. If you're feeding a high forage ration, you're probably good for calcium. On pasture in the summer, we're probably low for calcium because most pastures are mainly grass pastures. Calcium is the essential building block for building bones, teeth, enzymes, hormones, and muscle development. Calcium deficiency is commonly manifested as a milk fever in high-producing lactating cows. A lot of times you'll see this where a cow will go down and she'll be low calcium. If that would be a severe case of calcium deficiency, can be rectified with quick treatment with your vet. Also in minor cases you'll see reduced milk production. You can see retained placentas in cows after birth. Stillborn calves or poor reproductive performance are common symptoms of calcium deficiency. So if you're seeing cows that are having issues with calving or with rebreeding, a lot of times that could go back to a calcium deficiency. Calcium supplementation on a high grain ration, you're probably looking at high grain would be if you're feeding you know, barley or oats, or it's a large portion of your ration. You're probably looking at needing a 2 or 3-to-1 mineral supplement mix included in the ration, or fed free choice. If that still isn't high enough, and really the only way you're going to know is if you actually do a feed test to see what calcium levels you're at. But if that still isn't high enough, you can go back in with an addition of calcium carbonate and basically feed grade limestone, and that's high in calcium, and that could definitely get your calcium levels up high in the herd fast. Phosphorus. Phosphorus grains are usually considered a good source of phosphorus, and forages are usually a marginal supplier of phosphorus. Therefore, when you're on pasture and forage-based diets, generally you're deficient in phosphorus. With a deficiency in phosphorus, you can get low conception rates, you can get reduced feed intake, you get poor feed efficiency, lower growth rate, reduced milk production, and reproductive failures. A common symptom of phosphorus deficiency is often seen as an abnormal habit of eating or chewing foreign substances such as dirt or wood. And a lot of times you'll see cattle that will be chewing on wood, or they'll be licking at the ground. So that sometimes could be, that might be an indication of low phosphorus in the diet. Most critical need for phosphorus is in the last trimester of pregnancy, so 2 to 3 months pre-calving, and in the period immediately prior to breeding season. So with the move of a lot of producers to later calving or calving on pasture, this could become more of an issue for producers, because from the previous slide where we said that the forages are a marginal supplier of phosphorus, and you're on pasture and you want those cows to calve and then rebreed quickly, you know, making sure your phosphorus levels are there is important. With calcium and phosphorus, we find that they're kind of our two key macronutrients, and they have a ratio, and the calcium and phosphorus are present in the body in approximately a 2-to-1 ratio. That is 2 parts calcium, 1 part phosphorus. Calcium and phosphorus are absorbed by the animal in proportions that are present in the diet. That is why it's important to feed test, because what that last statement said is basically if you're giving cattle silage, they're going to be eating the silage that's in front of them, and meanwhile they may not be getting enough calcium. So basically they're going to eat what you feed them, but the levels may not be there at that 2-to-1 ratio. So the importance of a feed test is to let you know where you're sitting with that ratio, and then it would help you determine what type of mineral concentration you would need of each of those 2 products to get that 2-to-1 ratio. Sodium and chloride are basically your salts. Feeds do not contain sufficient sodium and chlorine for chlorine to satisfy the animal requirements. Deficiency symptoms manifest themselves as poor appetite, reduced performance in general, and fitness of animals. Salt is usually not a big issue. Usually if you put salt out, the animals, if they're lacking it, they will eat it. They have a desire to eat salt, and therefore it's actually used as actually a carrier for some of the other minerals. You'll see a lot of producers that'll mix salt in with mineral to get the cattle to eat the minerals. So yeah, salt is usually not a big problem in getting into the cattle. Magnesium deficiencies reduce calving rates, calf vigor, and rate of gaining calves. Reduced conception rates would be the primary deficiency symptoms from magnesium, and again, it's just one of the ones that's usually part of the blend when you purchase your mineral. Sulfur, another macronutrient, it's a component of body protein, some vitamins and several hormones. It maintains proper pH involved in blood clotting. In areas where water is high in sulfates, excess sulfur can be a problem. So there's where if you might be in an area where water testing might be something you could look for, because excess sulfur can interfere with copper and selenium uptake. And if you have issues with, say, selenium uptake, you could have issues with white muscle disease in calves and issues like that. So water testing to see what kind of what your water quality is like for your cattle would be an easy way of just seeing where you sit in some of these macronutrients. So this, jumping over to the microminerals now, and when you look at the microminerals, you look at there'll be 6 or 7 of them, and microminerals are important. A lot of times they are part of the bag of mineral you buy. They're already in there. but I just wanted to go through some of them just to see if you're seeing some issues on the farm. Some of them can relate that back to some deficiencies of some of the microminerals as well. Zinc affects the growth rate, skin conditions, hoof health, reproduction, skeletal development. One of the things with zinc is a deficiency can increase the incidence of foot rot and decrease bull fertility. So if you're having an issue on the farm with, say, lots of foot rot issues, you know, there's something there that you might want to look at to make sure your minerals got enough zinc in it. Iodine deficiency may cause goiter, decreased milk yield, impaired fertility, and increased incidence of retained placenta. Cows deficient in iodine may have calves that are born blind, weak, hairless, or stillborn. And you know, again, just another key, if you're getting calves that are really weak at birth or showing some of these symptoms, again, it's something you can go back and look and just see what the mineral you are feeding. Or if you're not feeding mineral, maybe the potential of adding mineral to your program would help out. Cobalt, necessary for microorganisms in the rumen to synthesize vitamin B12. Deficiencies can result in loss of appetite, listlessness, decreased growth, reduced milk production, and rough hair coat. A lot of times we'll see those cows that have a rough hair coat or just kind of not a nice smooth hair coat, and that could be back to just the lack of some of the minerals that's required to develop a good hair coat. Just again a sign from the cow telling you that she's lacking something. Manganese, important role in growth and reproduction. Deficiency results in reduced conception rates, poor growth rates, low birth weight, and increased abortions. Calves with manganese deficiencies dams have been observed with contracted or twisted fetlocks at birth. So another kind of, I guess, hint as to what you might be deficient in is if you look at or have a calf that's born that's, you know, showing a symptom that you haven't seen before, it could relate back to one of these deficiencies. Selenium, in conjunction with vitamin E, boosts your immune functions. With selenium, you could have too much or you could have not enough. If you have too much, you could have some birth defects, some lameness, blind staggers too, is what they call it. Deficiencies, we've all probably heard of white muscle disease. You get reduced resistance to disease, birth of dead or weak calves, increased incidence of retained placenta, and lower cow fertility. So again, just something where when you're seeing weak calves being born, especially at this time of year, or you're seeing even stillbirths, you know, that could be relating back to a selenium issue. Copper, red blood cell health, reproduction, and immunity. Deficiency signs include faded hair coats, infertility, severe scouring, brittle bones, and reduced immune response. Again, one where if you're seeing sickly calves, you're seeing cows with a poor hair coat, and certain areas in the province are known to have lower copper in our forage crops that we're harvesting. We could be seeing this in some of the herds where we have a copper deficiency. So making sure that you're supplying copper through your mineral is a good way to help to counteract some of these issues. I guess one of the things that you probably notice as you go through these minerals and you go through the micros and the macro minerals is that a lot of them refer back to reproduction issues or poor gains and poor growth. And you know, I guess when it's a common problem when the cows are lacking something. Right away, the first things that start to happen is poor reproduction and poor growth. So if you have an issue with any of those, that's where your mineral situation is something you should be looking at. Minerals or supplements are available usually in 3 categories when you go to purchase them from any of the dealers. You've got your high calcium, low phosphorus minerals, which are the ones that are usually a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 mineral. Again, if you're feeding a ration or you're feeding a high grain or silage ration, additional calcium can be, these would be the ones you'd be looking into first. Then what I would do is I would probably be looking at a feed test to see what my calcium would be in that ration, and if my calcium isn't high enough, then you could go to the feed grade limestone to add to that ration to increase your calcium, so you can stay in that 2-to-1 ratio that is recommended. If you're feeding a base grain forage ration or an alfalfa grass ration, you probably can get away with the 1-to-1 mineral because our forages are usually fairly high in calcium, and because of that, the ratio is probably good. So again, depending on what you're feeding, again, I would probably get a feed test just to see what my levels were, and then you could choose from a 1-to-1 to the 2-to-1. You probably wouldn't even think of a 3-to-1 in a situation like that. Low calcium, high phosphorus, 1-to-2 mineral. This mineral will be used in a supplementary ration that is basically, say, just a straight alfalfa ration. And in a lot of cases, we don't have too many producers that would be feeding beef cattle just a straight alfalfa ration. So, the calcium levels are probably higher than our phosphorus in most cases. But if you are feeding a high level legume ration, then you could be looking at a mineral which is a 1-to-2, which would increase the amount of phosphorus you would be feeding the cattle. When you're going to start feeding mineral, or if you're having issues feeding mineral, a lot of producers are feeding mineral free of choice. With mineral for cows, the intake should normally be about 2 ounces per head per day. Salt intake should be 1.5 to 2 ounces per head per day. So when feeding dry hair silage, voluntary intake generally drops because they're just not requiring it, and they're not going to want to just go eat straight mineral. Green feed and silage can contain very high levels of sodium or salts, and that could reduce their salt intake as well. So again, you can run into some issues with feeding or trying to get them to eat mineral salt when you're in those situations. Producers that are feeding high silage rations are usually adding the mineral right to the ration as they're feeding it. This way the cattle are kind of being force-fed it. Your water situation, if you have hard water, mineral intakes are usually lower, and basically because the cattle are, again, not requiring the salt and not really looking to eat a lot of that. So just to get them to eat the mineral is going to be a little bit more of an issue. Location is usually something you can help to get cattle to maybe increase their intake. And if you put it in areas where, like high traffic areas where, they're going to be walking by once or twice a day, by the watering hole, anywhere in those areas, if you can do that, then you'll know that they'll be walking by and they'll, maybe stop and have a bit every once in a while. Some other methods of feeding. Free choice is probably the biggest one that's being done out there. But however, this one you can't really say that everybody's getting everything they need, and variations of intake is definitely there. With free choice, palatability is probably the biggest problem. So you got to make sure you try to get something in there where they're going to want to eat it. Water quality we talked about. The feed is going to be important because depending on how much what's in the feed, they're going to pick and choose as what they want for mineral. And the physical location, we kind of talked about these ones. mixing salt with the cattle mineral supplement is something that has been done and actually works fairly well. If you're going to do that, one of the things to do would be is to kind of mix it as a 1 part salt to 1 part mineral to start with, and then take away any, like if you have salt blocks out there or anything like that, take those away. So basically the salt that they're going to get is going to be coming from the mineral. Once they get onto it, then the best thing to do would be to increase that, decrease the salt and increase the mineral. So you're 1 part salt to 2 parts mineral, and then this way you can get your mineral levels up to where you want them to be. One of the common things, and I guess one of the things I hear a lot when I get talking to producers about mineral, is they're saying that it costs too much and the cows look fine without it. And you know, if you have good feed, you can probably get away with a lot of things, but you probably still aren't maximizing your production, and you probably could be making a little bit more money if you were on the right nutrient or mineral program. This was some work done in way back in the 70s, I guess, but it was cattle that were fed, given a phosphorus mineral and the non-phosphorus mineral. And when they did the calf crop, the percent calf crop on the non-phosphorus was about 80%, and the calf crop on the mineral was about 97%. 200 days of weight, there was a difference in weight between the non-phosphorus and the phosphorus of about 20 pounds. So if we put some numbers to this, and when they originally did this, they put some numbers that, and I went back and did some changing to them, and it'll be on the last slide. But if you use that table and assume that you had a 100-cow herd, and just with the calf cow number and the increase in weights, you can figure out, I guess, what it would cost, or the extra money you would make less the mineral cost and see if there was actually money to be made. So if you look at you go back, and it was a 97% calf crop on the ones fed mineral, and they were 461 pounds, and if the other ones was a 79% calf crop at 440, the difference in pounds was 9,900 pounds of extra weaned calf. Those cows consume 36 pounds of mineral per head per year, so they were fed mineral for the whole season, or all year long. So they ate a fair bit of mineral, pretty much 3/4 of a bag of mineral per cow. When you do the math on the calves, 9,900 pounds divided by 2 to break them down into how many would be steers and how many would be heifers. So you've got about 5,000 pounds for each of them. Steers at $1.58 and heifers at $1.33 a pound in the fall. You're looking at steers bringing you an extra $7,800 and heifers bringing you an extra $6,600 for a total of about $14,500. But you still need to subtract the cost of all that mineral you fed them. The cows ate 36 pounds each at 100 would be 3,600 pounds. So you went through a ton and a half of mineral at let's say $1,000 a ton. You're looking at about $1,600 worth of mineral. So by spending $1,600 feeding mineral, you made almost an extra $13,000. Now, first when I looked at that, I went, well, that's a pretty big difference in calf numbers. And so what I did is I went through and I made a couple changes, and brought it down to only a 10% difference in weaned calves. So instead of weaning off the 97 calves were weaned off on the one fed mineral, and the other ones were 87 calves. So basically there was only a 10 calf difference. And you do the numbers there, there was still 3,200 pounds of extra weight between the steers and when you combine the steers and the heifers. And if we leave the price the same, you were looking at an extra $9,000 for calf wean. And then if you take off the price of mineral of about $1,600, you're still up about $7,000. Now, you can do the numbers and bring it back even so there's a 5% difference, and you're still going to be making money over and above the cost of your mineral. So for it's an initial layout of money, but you know, you won't get the return on that at that cost, and you'll get it also in some other ways. You'll get it in healthier cows, which will mean healthier calves. Healthier calves mean less treating for issues like scours, for sickly cows when they're born and having to work with them to get them going, just the extra time involved. You know, there's several things that are definitely going to be factor in even above just the plain, you know, dollars and cents that shown on the screen here. So I guess the key factor is to develop a mineral program for your farm, I think, and you definitely see the benefits of it, and it'll be something that can return you back some profit. So I think with that, Linda, I don't know if there's any questions or.
No, I don't have any questions at this time, Lionel.
Okay, well, like I had mentioned, we did have a couple other people lined up for today, but because of some things that have come up, we weren't be able to go with them. So with that, I think that's all that I have for today, and we will see everybody the end of April.